everybody, and welcome to Thought Raid, a show where we take on thoughts and find better ways of thinking about them. I'm Brandon Brown, owner of United Gamers Nations and a lay counselor, and with me today is the wonderful Tim DeNock, a Break the Meta and life coach. And welcome, everybody. Welcome, everybody. I don't think you could be heard just yet for some reason, so let me make sure that gets shifted, because we need you to be heard. Say some things.
Brandon.
Now you can be heard. Okay, good. I had a moment where no sound was coming through. I was like, oh no, this is no good.
I don't think we're live on Facebook.
Let me check that then. Let me go over here. So far, everything's working on YouTube. Stay on post. Let me go over to Facebook. Go to Thought Raid. Refresh on Thought Raid. And you are incorrect. We are live. So we're good.
I don't see the things.
Just
okay,
if you don't see it, just hit the refresh button and that'll make it show up. That's what I have to do. Sometimes I just have to hit reset and it just works fine. So I don't know. But anyways, welcome everybody.
Hello.
Today is Friday, where we have a particular topic prepared for you guys. And today's topic, Tim, you're going to be leading this one a little bit here, because this is your week. And we're going to be talking about how tolerance can destroy relationships. And this is a very interesting topic, because I know a lot of people that are really into the whole tolerance thing, to tolerate other people. And it's a big thing, especially... I don't know exactly how big it is as of presently, as it was at least when I was going through high school and college, because then it was just like you would literally have so many cars with that bumper sticker that says tolerate, and it would have every symbol of religion in there to spell out the word tolerate, and so that was a big thing. But I do know that tolerance is one of those things that can definitely go overboard. And so this is something that I want to throw over to you, Tim, to begin to describe what's on your mind with that.
All right. So I'm going to go ahead and throw some stuff into the chat. These are the bullet points for today. I'm just trying something different so I don't have to keep entering them. I think they went through. Oh, no. What's going on with my chat? We'll poop.
Is it not showing up on YouTube or Facebook? Oh, there it is.
What kind of things do we tolerate? I guess I just have to do them one by one. Okay, whatever. Anyways, so the definition of tolerate that I want to use is, if I can... Man, having all sorts of issues today. Okay, did that show up?
Yes.
There we go. So when I think about tolerating stuff, there's a lot of loving ways to tolerate things where you just accept things for how they are. Like if you go to dictionary.com and look up the word tolerate, as I am doing now, it says to allow the existence, occurrence, or practice of something that does not necessarily that we do not necessarily like or agree with without interference. To accept or endure someone or something unpleasant or disliked with forbearance, or to be capable of continued subjection to without adverse reaction. And whenever I think about tolerance, I always think about how poorly the Christian religion has related love to those who don't follow Jesus specifically.
Mm-hmm.
There's all this weird, it's like a weird social, cultural, Christian cultural dogma to not tolerate homosexuality, to not tolerate premarital sex, to not tolerate all this stuff. And, the weird thing about it is, I think about the dichotomy between Jesus and the Christians, and then people who don't follow Jesus, because there are other things that are not approved, that Jesus wants in our lives, that there's it creates the rift in relationship. And it's tolerate this. You have to have tolerance for the LGBT community. You have to have tolerance for other religions. You have to have tolerance for all these things. And Sorry, guys. I've had some weird cough today. And I'm just thinking about how this relates to who Jesus is. Because, Brandon, you and me at our core, we try our best to follow Jesus and to relate to people how much he loves us and just allow that to spill over, you know? And tolerance is a really weird subject because it seems like tolerating somebody is a good thing, you know, to allow the existence, occurrence, or practice of something that one does not necessarily like or agree with without interference. You know, for instance, if somebody's leading a homosexual lifestyle, I should tolerate that, which means just allow it to exist, occur, or them to practice without interfering. After all, you know, 1 Corinthians 13 says that we're not supposed to insist on our own way, you know, or we're supposed to tolerate other religions. We're supposed to tolerate people who are poor fathers, poor wives, poor children, poor students. We're supposed to tolerate people that make poor decisions. We're supposed to tolerate all these things. And I agree with that to a degree. But the direction I want to head with this today is specifically to accept or endure with forbearance. When I say the word tolerate, and before we flesh this out the way I want to go, Brandon, what kind of things do you think we tolerate? What kind of things do you tolerate? What do you just put up with?
I mean, oftentimes I've tolerated like people that annoy me. Like people who never seem to talk about anything important ever. I've tolerated that kind of behavior. Trying to think. I mean, I have tolerated people from different points of view, from different religions, from different walks of life. Like, I don't really force what I believe on other people. I will definitely share with you what I believe, but when it comes to just what I accept, you know, without really challenging it on a day-to-day basis, I recognize that it's kind of fruitless to try to like say, oh, what you're doing is unacceptable, because they could easily find things that I'm doing that's unacceptable. So like, why put myself through that kind of pain? You know, and I'm talking, when I say like confront, I mean like on a regular basis. I'm not talking about like I pointed out once. I'm talking about like regularly over and over again.
Yeah.
So I mean, like I've tolerated annoying people from different viewpoints, people from different religions, people from different like things that I believe are wrong. Like I've allowed them to be. I've tolerated atheists and agnostics. I've tolerated just a whole bunch of types of people that I would not necessarily agree with, but I love them, so I put up with them.
Yeah. I remember a long time ago, probably a long time, 7 years ago, there was this meme that came across, and it was this person that was gifting their mate a cake, and the cake said, "I tolerate you." I just think that's so funny, man. Like in a lot of relationships, you just get to this point, or a lot of people get to this point where it's like, well, I accept you for who you are, and I'm just tolerating you at this point, you know? And I get that. But it also makes me really sad, because when you think about tolerating somebody, like, to me, that doesn't bode well for the relationship. It doesn't bode well for you viewing them as a person. It doesn't bode well for not looking specifically at their circumstances. When I say, Brandon, I'm tolerating you right now, that doesn't feel good. You know,
No.
It doesn't feel like there's a connection. Let me pull my notes up again real quick. Is tolerance loving or unloving? Sorry, we got all these windows open. So going back to the original like part of this where we were talking about tolerating different religions or different lifestyles, whatnot, is it loving or is it unloving? And I think that's a really big question because, you know, with all this stuff going on right now with, I mean, look at the election that just happened. You know, you saw two huge parties of people that were not tolerating one another, but at the same time, I think that tolerance isn't loving. I don't think tolerance is loving. They were intolerant, basically, because you could look at it from the perspective of, okay, I'm just not going to accept your viewpoint. Whatever, I'm intolerant. But at the same time, if you tolerate it, it's like, I'm just putting up with this. You know, I put up with the fact, Brandon, that you're different than I am. I put up with the fact that you voted for so and so. I put up with the fact that you're leading this lifestyle. I put up with the fact that you annoy me, and I just have given up all hope that you're going to change anything. I put up, and it's just, I don't know. I've just been thinking a lot about that lately, and how we focus on tolerance instead of engagement. But what do you think, Brandon? Is tolerance loving or unloving?
I feel like it would vastly depend on how you tolerate people and what that exactly, like how you execute that. Because if you're going by the definition that you posted, specifically, it says overcoming or successfully controlling an impulse to resist, avoid, or resent something injurious or distasteful. Wait, that's something a little bit different than the definition that you gave. What was the definition you found dictionarily wise?
To allow the existence, occurrence, or practice of something that one does not necessarily like or agree with without interference. To accept or endure someone or something unpleasant or disliked with forbearance, and to be capable of continued subjection to without adverse reaction.
Okay, because like on a regular basis, like I mean, again, depending on how you go about it, it could be. It's not perfect love, but it is at least some form of attempt to love someone, to put up with what they believe. At least you're not immediately going to murder them, but it is dishonest. I mean, at the end of the day, I feel like if all you're ever doing is tolerating a person, and there's no change in the fact that you're just simply tolerating things, that definitely can be problematic and not loving after a while.
Mhm.
But like, for instance, if I were to encounter someone who is very abrasive, but I know that there's something on the inside of them that needs to be called out, and it's someone like someone higher, they can be higher and better than they currently are. I can tolerate them for a time in order to help them, but then after a while, there has to be a point of like, I cannot tolerate this anymore. I
Yeah,
don't know.
just thinking about that though, because there's definitely been people in my life that I've shied away from because I've just tolerated their situation, and it's like it's almost like I create a barrier of safety around me by allowing them to exist over there and allowing me to exist here without breaching the veil of conflict. I went ahead because I know I don't feel right about going bullet point, bullet point, bullet point today. I want this conversation to flow because it kind of ties in with the topic that we were going to cover last week. So let me hit these real quick. So, is tolerance loving or unloving? What effect does tolerance have on relationships? How does tolerance influence our ability to love others? And the difference between tolerance and engagement. So those are the key points I want to hit. I am so sorry, guys. But I think, when I consider tolerating somebody, I think it's incredibly cowardly. As I mentioned, there have been relationships in my life where I've allowed them to stand over there and me to stand here, and I just agreed to, okay, well, we're just different. We're not going to see eye to eye. I'm going to tolerate the way that you think, even though I don't agree with it, as long as you stay over there. And to a lot of people, that's a respectable viewpoint, a respectable perspective. And I guess when you compare it to the way that the church used to do things, where it's like, if you have a different viewpoint than us, we're going to burn you at a stake. I guess that's a little bit more loving. But I can't help but to think how much that destroys relationships. Hence, the title of the stream today, why tolerance destroys relationships, because relationship is all about connection. Relationship is all about getting to know somebody, the ins, the outs, accepting who they are in their identity instead of who they are in their circumstances. But, the thing I want to posit to you guys is that when you are tolerating something and you're thinking from the position of circumstance or agenda or whatever's going on in their life, and I'm just going to tolerate this, you're looking at the circumstance instead of the person. Basically, you're not saying you're valuable, so I'm going to engage with you because I like I like you, you're valuable to me, you have inherent value. No, it's like, well, you do have value, but because this is a part of you, I'm going to keep you over here where it's safe so I don't have to engage with that or, talk about that or, test what I think versus what you think. I feel like preserving my ability to be right is so much more important and so much more valuable than, engaging you in that. And I think that's the big problem that I have with it, because when we're talking about being tolerant of other people's religions, for instance, let's hazard a conversation. Let's engage in it. Like, why do you believe the way that you believe? Why do I believe the way that I believe? Let's find the common ground, because if we're all searching for truth, and truth is unshakable, and truth cannot be disproven, then what am I afraid of? Am I loving the right way? Or, okay, wife, am I loving you? Or am I loving myself? Let's engage in this. Or do I want to just tolerate the fact that you're tolerating me?
So
and we're not.
Go ahead and finish.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say. So I guess it really depends upon how you go about the tolerating aspect of it. Like how do you tolerate people, like in your own specific, like not necessarily like you are the one defining tolerance, but like if I was intolerant of a person and my goal was to minister to them, it would be very hard to minister to them because all the things they're doing I would not agree with. I would not have the patience to deal with them through the process if I'm tolerating their what they're going through. And maybe I'm using tolerant and it's actually another word that I'm describing. It could be that. Because I'm not necessarily, when I'm engaging with someone, like I'm not necessarily like, I don't necessarily like what people believe, and I'm not going to accept what they believe if I know that it's damaging and hurting them and taking them farther away from God. Like I'm not going to accept that as good or okay. But if I feel like if I don't have some degree of tolerance, instead I will be afraid of the person or the belief or whatever. So the tolerance would then, in this way, empower me to be able to work through the differences to the point where we can, at some point, talk about things that they may not be currently open to. I don't know, but maybe that's not tolerance. Maybe that's more determination. I don't know.
As you're talking, I'm just thinking about how, oddly, tolerance seems like the way to go. But I think I want to hypothesize with you guys and just like offer once again, I guess posit is the right word. I just want to posit that intolerance is the way to go, but not from the way that a lot of people think about it. It's like intolerance is coming at it from the position of I'm right and you're wrong. No, that's not what I'm saying at all. I want to say that being loving to somebody is being intolerant to the degree of, well, there is a truth, and I acknowledge that truth, but I also acknowledge your value, even though the truth is the truth. I guess what that would look like is, the first thing that comes to mind is a homosexual, somebody engaging in a homosexual lifestyle, right? And the reason I'm thinking about this is Samuel Perez. If you guys go to our YouTube channel and look up our partners, there's a cool guy, Samuel Perez, who talks about how God helped him with his perspective on homosexuality because he was living a homosexual lifestyle. He was a dancer and did all sorts of stuff, and God took him out of that. But anyways, he did a podcast the other day where he was talking about should you attend a gay wedding, right? I think that was I found myself drawn into that conversation because that's often what I think about too. Like my big thing is value versus circumstance. God looks at the value before he looks at the circumstance, and the circumstances get healed because you acknowledge your value in God. That's how it works, right? And so if that's the case, and if toleration is looking specifically at the circumstance, then being intolerant is looking at the truth while maintaining the person's value. So in this conversation, he said, well, I think it's really important to address why they would invite you to their wedding in general, in the first place. If they knew that you did not believe as they believed, why would they invite you? Because that could also be unloving. It's like we're a gay couple, we're getting married, we understand that you don't believe this, but we're going to invite you anyways. Do they want you there for validation and affirmation of their wedding? Or do they just want you to be there to whatever, And something cool that he said that I agree with is that he would have a conversation with them and say, hey, this is the truth that I believe, and this is true. This is what I believe to be true. As long as we're in agreement that we disagree, I love you regardless of the circumstance. I'm not supporting your unhealthy lifestyle, but I'm supporting you as a person because God loves you. And going through something like that, that's being intolerant of their perspective because you're engaging in the truth, but at the same time, you're not putting the circumstance over their value. And that's what I'm trying to convey, I believe. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, like, not. I mean, yeah, I mean, like, you. What. Then I feel like that's where it comes into, like, the whole, like, what is your way about like tolerating things? Like, what exactly, when you think of tolerating someone, it's like, in my mind, I'm thinking about, this person is intrinsically valuable, so I'm going to tolerate them for them so I can be in their lives and help them instead of, like, in my mind of like to be intolerant is to look at all the things wrong with them and not want to interact with them. So that leads to how why there's a disconnect in this moment, is because in my mind, if I'm going to be intolerant, I don't want anything to do with the person whatsoever, so I'm never going to help them because I'm so caught up in their sin that I'm not seeing their value. And the tolerance is, to me at least, I'm seeing their value, and therefore I'm able to work through their sin to a point where we can get past that and separate ourselves from the sin and come to the other side of it. But then again, by definition, by least definition, I don't think that's actually what would tolerating a person be.
Yeah. Well, so I'm thinking about, well, you remember how a second ago I was talking about how it creates the veil of conflict that a lot of people don't want to cross? Some of my better relationships and some of the most fulfilling conversations I've had are with people that I disagree with, and engaging with them from the position of, hey, I actually want to engage with you and talk to you about these things, even though you don't agree with me, because this is what I believe to be true, and not holding that back, but at the same time, not insisting that they believe what I believe. I had a conversation with somebody earlier that asked me a question we were talking about love and how to understand our value apart from our actions and all the things that we do. And he said, well, how do you do that if you don't follow God? And I was honest with him, because I wanted to give him lip service and just say, well, you can, here's what you do, and you can. But I was like, hey, dude, I'm just being honest with you. I don't think it's possible to truly understand your value apart from God. I believe that's true, because God made you very specifically. He planned you out. He loves you intentionally. The whole purpose for the gospel is him sacrificing himself and going through tons of pain because you were valuable to him, regardless of what you've done. Even the people that were spitting at him and beating him and whatnot. And the fact that you don't believe that doesn't change that it's a truth. I believe that, right? But at the same time, a lot of us shy away from those conversations thinking it's loving to be tolerant. Well, if it's the truth and you believe that it's the truth, then it's more loving to be intolerant and actually engage without insisting that they come to your position.
So
right?
Essentially, a tolerance, again, just refocusing on the definition, is accepting something regardless if you believe it or not. Is that kind of like what the definition that's going for, like, again, with the actual...
allow the existence, occurrence, or practice of without interference. And that's the key thing, without interference. Because think about that. Imagine that everybody in the world had a different viewpoint than you, that you just had to tolerate, right? And you just had to, you were going to tolerate it. By that definition, it means, okay, well, I'm going to let them engage in their lifestyle. They're going to do whatever they're going to want to do, their belief, whatever. I'm just not going to interfere. Basically, what that means that there is going to be a lack of connection that you acknowledge because you believe that the circumstance of what you believe is more important than engaging with somebody disagreeing with the opportunity to uncover the truth. That's what I'm talking about.
Well, it just seems like it's fostering a feeling of complacency. Like I'm becoming complacent, apathetic. Because, like, everyone has these different... Being, by that definition, and looking at it from that perspective, being tolerant breeds apathy, because it's like you see a whole bunch of people doing things and you keep tolerating it and you keep tolerating it and you keep tolerating it and you keep tolerating it. The definition that I've been using for tolerance is probably not proper, what I haven't had, which is why I keep going back and forth over this thing, because I don't necessarily live my life according to the definition of tolerance. My tolerating is more so loving, rather than I'm seeing you do these things that I don't agree with, and I'm just going to let you do you without interfering with your life or saying that this is wrong or not good, or it's leading you towards a destructive path that's going to kill you in the end. And
Well, I
it's
think
become
it's different
apathetic.
though, because if you're not careful, that could easily lead to pluralism or universalism. It's like, well, just I don't accept it, but it's okay if you just stay over there, and that's not true. It's not okay. The
No.
truth is, you're leading an unhealthy lifestyle. The truth is this, but at the same time, it's like, well, I just want to let you know what the truth is. You don't have to accept it. I love you because you are valuable. I'm not going to make you change, but I'm also not going to waver from what I believe to be true. I will test it, and I will allow you to talk to me about your point. But
And heck, you're gonna have to set up boundaries eventually with the person too, because it's not like it's like, okay, like I'm gonna let you, like here's the truth. You got the choice to accept it or not. If you choose not to accept it, here's the boundary.
Yeah, well,
For me,
the other thing is,
for me,
the idea of being intolerant in an unhealthy way is what a lot of people have done, and that's why this is probably hitting the wrong way. If I think about being intolerant from an unhealthy way, it's all just thinking, well, I'm right and they're wrong, but that's not what it's about at all. Being intolerant in a healthy way is saying, well, one of us has got to be right, or maybe we're both wrong. Being intolerant in a healthy way is saying there's a truth out there. We need to engage in that. But the thing is, it's really difficult to do that without pride welling up.
essentially,
We
the
all
opposite of tolerance is getting involved in someone's life, not just letting them have their life, but getting involved in their life. And there is a healthy way and an unhealthy way of doing that.
Yeah, because I don't know, man. The idea that I could have a healthy relationship with somebody who does not believe as I do, without just leaving certain things as off-limit topics, I don't like that. If you have a healthy relationship with somebody, there should not be topics that are off limits, and which is essentially what this says.
Yes,
It
I
says
agree.
allow the existence, occurrence, or practice of something that one does not necessarily like or agree with, without interference. Right? Basically, stay over there. I'll stay over here. That topic's off limits. Well, that's an eggshell. How many eggshells are you going to allow in your relationships? Right? You could think, well, I'm tolerating this just because they're different. Well, basically what you're saying is there's a part of you and a part of them that are never going to be like this, even if it doesn't excuse me, agree with one another. The fact that you're not willing to disagree and still look at the value of one another is a red flag. Brandon, you and I have disagreed on things in the past, and there are some things that we disagree on as far as like how to engage in certain things sometimes. But none of that really matters because I trust that you're pursuing the truth, and I trust that I'm pursuing you. You trust that I'm pursuing the truth. You know that I'm a valuable person. You know that I have worth and that my heart is good, right?
Yep.
And so it's like, well, we disagree, but there's a truth. We'll keep pursuing that together, and that's the whole unity concept, And if you look at the church and the Holy Spirit, people can pray for things that are completely contrary to one another. Isn't that weird? It's like one Christian can pray for this thing to happen, the other Christian can pray for this to happen, and they'll butt heads. And how does God reconcile that? It's because there's gray area, right? And the gray area is where you have a relationship with God, right? And we're not. I mean, Corinthians says that when I was a child, I saw like a child dimly, as though in a mirror, and then it says, as I got older, I put away the childish things, and I see fully, right?
Well, it says, when I was a child, I thought and reasoned and I guess played as a child. When I grew up, I put away childish things. Now we see things imperfectly, like dimly through a mirror, but then we will see things perfectly. Kind of thing. It's like, then I'm thinking then seeing things perfectly is not necessarily that we're going to always see things perfectly in this life, but eventually in the life to come, we will see things perfectly.
Yeah, and it's that approach, man. It's realizing that we're all responsible for our own salvation. We're responsible for our own relationship with Jesus. We are responsible for figuring things out, asking him questions, and letting him help us with the perspective. And Brandon, you might have a perspective that's true right now that I'm not going to accept until I'm 80.
Jeez.
You know, but just think about that. If you tolerate that part of me and you say, well, Tim, as long as you keep that over there, I'll keep this over here. And, that veil of conflict we'll keep here. As long as that's there, we're only going to be able to go so far with our relationship.
We very much will. I mean, there's a lot of relationships that had to stop because the level of deepness and honesty that we have with each other also stopped. Because 9 times out of 10, it's usually maybe 8 times, because I'm not that accurate, but maybe let's say 8 times out of 10, it's usually because the other person that I was pursuing was just like, well, and then that was it. I was just like we can't go deeper, can't, once we start just like tolerating differences and not actually challenge them and have the ability to talk about them, not to say that we would agree, but that we would at least talk about it and be open about it and be open to hear what each other are saying about things. That could be an intimacy killer. Not having like being tolerant of a person. Like if I'm tolerant of a person, I've ceased to grow with them. I've just stopped. I have a community member in UGN that I tolerated for a while, and we ceased to grow because the community member was highly irritating to me, and I had tried to help over and over and over and over again, and that community member seemed to never either care or kept doing the same thing, whatever, and so I just shut down and just started tolerating, and as I began to tolerate them, instead of actually continuing to work with them, well, we just kind of were frozen in time. We're not able to go any further. And it wasn't until some confrontations that happened between the two of us that there was a little bit more growth that happened. But it was that confrontation, it was that intolerance of certain things that definitely restarted the growth process. It was not the intolerance. The intolerance delayed the inevitable. The tolerance delayed the inevitable. The tolerance delayed the inevitable. Make sure I'm wording that correctly.
Yeah, I want to get to the point where I can have a conversation with somebody without feeling threatened. Because I do in certain regards, just because there's so much stuff, guys, there's so much stuff I don't know. There's so much stuff that I believe is truth right now that is probably untrue, and I have to be okay with that. And that's the position you have to come at these types of conversations with, these healthy and tolerant conversations. Because person, if you're watching this and you believe that, for instance, pornography is okay, well, let's talk about that. Like I remember there have been, when I worked for GameStop, there were so many times where I engaged in legitimate conversations with my employees that they did not want to have. I was like, no, we're going to have these conversations because you are important, right? We need to figure out why you're thinking this way. I want you to know why I'm thinking this way. Let's come to a conclusion where we have a healthy relationship. And sometimes we would get to the end of those conversations and still not see eye to eye. But the important thing was that we communicate, hey, you are worth this conversation. It's okay to not agree. And we can revisit this until we figure out, come to a consensus as to what's true and what's not. But the most important thing about having healthy intolerance is conveying, hey, this is a to be continued conversation. This is not a period you suck conversation because I don't agree with you. Yeah. Right? See, that's the only way that you steward relationships. You maintain them with the posture of to be continued. Right? So I have so many friends and they're homosexual. That's okay. That is fine. I don't believe that homosexuality is something that God wants us to engage in. If you believe differently, that's fine. Let's talk about it. I mean, I don't think I'm wrong, but I'm open to being wrong. And that's the cool thing about the truth is you can't change the truth, right? I want to get to the bottom of it because, well, truth is truth, and I want to do that. But I can't do that if all I do is sit within my own confirmation bias, But there are so many people where I've engaged in these conversations and where we've left it is, well, I believe differently than you. Great. Well, let's still go see a movie. Let's still, that veil of conflict is no longer there because we understand that You're going to respect me. I'm going to respect you. And we're still going to talk about this. And you end the conversation with a, let me think about that instead of, I hate them. They're wrong.
But it's interesting, though. I've gone, though, from having those confrontational conversations, and then the thing doesn't get resolved through the confrontation, and what's left to do? I have the option to then say, bye, or I can tolerate them until another time. And it's just like, what do you do then? Like, what do you do when you hit the situation where you recognize, I can't sit here and pretend to you that this is okay. I have to let you know that this is killing you. It's not good for you, whatever. And I've done that, and you come to me and you say, well, Brandon, I don't agree. And here is this list of things that is why you're wrong. And I look at these list of things and I see them like, well, this literally changes nothing. Like, I've definitely, like, seen these points, studied them my own self, and know them to be false. But it does not change your openness to it. What do you do in those situations where the communication shuts down?
Okay, I have 2 points on that. And I'm getting really excited thinking about this. So first of all, the very first thing you do with that is you work on your heart. Yeah. Your heart first, right? When you think you're right and you're hitting a brick wall with somebody, before you even think about changing their hearts, because you can't change their hearts, before you talk about telling them you're wrong, the Bible even says, before you call out the speck in your neighbor's eye, look first at the log in your own eye. So when you hit that brick wall, okay, well, did I communicate that in a way where it made them feel like I expected them to think as I think? Am I actually open to what they're saying? Am I actually listening to them, or am I just hearing them so I can convey my point? A lot of times when you come away from a conversation like that and you feel some kind of way, it's usually an issue with your heart where you're not having an open posture of humility and just allowing the truth to be truth, not the truth because you believe it. I think a lot of us try to attach what we think of as a truth to our pride. And basically, if that truth is threatened, then our pride is threatened and who we are is threatened. But you got to understand that you can't change truth. Who you are can't change truth. Circumstances can't change who you are. So nothing's really at risk in these conversations. If your value is not at risk, and if the truth is not at risk, then you should be able to navigate these conversations with everything's okay. The other thing is understanding when people are not willing to listen and not insisting on your own way. Because when you're talking to somebody and you can tell they're not open to it, that's casting your pearls before the swine. It doesn't make them a bad person. It just means that they're not in a season of growth where they're willing to listen to something like that, because they're attaching pride to the circumstance. They're attaching pride to what they believe to be the truth. And when people do that, like, that's why the LGBTQIA stuff is so difficult to reconcile with a relationship with God, because it's so rooted in identity. Like, sexual identity is a really big thing, and, male, female, man, woman, whatever. I was talking to somebody about this today. They asked me what I thought about homosexuality, and I said, well, honestly, I believe that God doesn't favor it. I believe that he thinks it's unhealthy. What I personally believe is that makes me sad, because I see so many people that engage in homosexual relationships who truly love that person, love their mate, their homosexual mate, or their non-binary mate, whatever. They know, they get the concept of love in action so much better than heterosexual good Christians, And it saddens me. Sometimes, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Sometimes, there's always going to be a sometimes, but yeah. It really saddens me to see people acting in love and God saying that's not the way your relationship is set up is not okay. But it's not up to Tim to say this is God's. No, God, I think you got this wrong. That's not how it is. Whenever God says this is unhealthy, he doesn't do it just to prevent us from doing something we want. He says that's unhealthy because, well, there's something that's going to damage you in some way. And a lot of times we just don't see it in the moment. Sometimes we don't even see it when we're not open to it. Like, Ariane has been trying to get me to go to the gym for a long time and eat well. But here I am, 30. I'll be 37 this year. I'm pretty healthy. Look at these muscles. Like, I feel healthy, and my lifestyle is technically not caught up with me yet. But since she works in healthcare, she knows what's going to happen if I continue my lifestyle of eating burgers and not working out, right? But I'm not in a place. Well, prior to this year, I wasn't in a place where I would accept that, and I wasn't willing to listen to it because I liked my lifestyle so much, right? It didn't damage me, or up until that point hadn't damaged me. But because I attached my pride to being right, I didn't even want to engage in those conversations. Well, for that reason also, because I didn't want something that I believed that was good to be taken away from me, right? But in those moments, I really had to check my heart, and I was like, well, why am I so defensive of just having a conversation about this? And then the honest answer was, well, she might be right. It's like, so if she's right, I have to give up what I really enjoy, which is junk food and not going to the gym. I enjoy not going to the. Nobody enjoys going to the. Well, except for those weirdos. If that's you, you're a weirdo. 1% of us. But
people like my cousin loves going to the gym.
Yeah, the thing about sin is that it feels good. It feels really good. And we all have it in our lives, whether it's engaging in pornography, telling the person that cut you off F you, getting frustrated, engaging in sexual thoughts that aren't respectful. There's so much stuff. We don't want to give it up because we think that what's on the other side, the healthy side of it, is not going to feel better, right? But that's all rooted in pride. And the Bible also says,
Or fear.
Or fear. The Bible says that people who, I'm going to get this verse wrong, people who engage in that stuff and give into their lust, God gives up to their own debased minds and thoughts.
That's something from Romans.
Yeah.
It's like Romans, I think that's like in the very first chapter of Romans, to be specific. Hold on, Romans 1. Let me pull that up. Bible Gate.
126.
126.
Yeah, I got it. For this reason, God gave them up to dishonorable passions. For their women exchanged natural relations for those that are contrary to nature, and the men likewise gave up natural relations with women and were consumed with passion for one another, men committing shameless acts with men and receiving in themselves the due penalty for their error.
And since they did not... I was gonna say that's the thing. It's like a lot of people, they will say that like sin is just sin is just the Christian way of trying to keep people from having fun. Or that it's a way like there's no basis, the due penalty, like there is physical ramifications for sinful things, be it homosexuality or lying or gluttony or
eating
whatever.
Poorly.
Yeah, eating poorly. Like there's anything that's labeled as sin has scientific reasons as to why it's a problem, regardless if it's something that's well known or governmentally hidden. It's still there's good reasons as to why this is considered a sin. It's actually damaging to the body, to the person.
Yeah. And the second half of that said, and since they did not see fit to acknowledge God, basically the whole tolerance thing. It's basically, God, you believe this, so I'm going to let you stay over there. I'm going to stay over here so I don't have to break that veil of conflict. God gave them up to a debased mind to do what ought not to be done. They were filled with all manner of unrighteousness, evil, covetousness, malice. They are full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, maliciousness. Now just think about a lot of the groups out there, Christians included with these groups, that just engage in tolerance, where you stay over there, I'll stay over here. We're not going to engage in this because I don't put your value over the circumstance, right? There are malicious groups out there that engage in life with it's almost like they're under the guise of being loving, but they're not being loving. It's basically just saying, well, I'm going to let you rot over there. We're not going to engage because you're not worth it, right? They are full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, maliciousness. They are gossips, slanderers, haters of God, insolent, haughty, boastful, inventors of evil, disobedient to parents, foolish, faithless, heartless, and ruthless. And Brandon, I think you hit the nail on the head earlier when you said apathy. Because at the end where it said heartless and ruthless, you have to be apathetic to be heartless and ruthless. You have to not care. And when that veil of conflict is there, and you don't want to breach that because you fear the circumstance more so than you approve of the value of relationship. Man, it's just like all you. It's all you. There's nobody else out there that you're going to engage with because everybody has something out there that you feel like you're going to have to tolerate. But when you start seeing that people have value and that the circumstances will change, their value does not, right? Think about people that have been elevated in social status or financial status, and all of a sudden, ooh, I want to be in a relationship with you now, to whatever degree. Or how about freaking what's his name from Harry Potter? That dude, Neville Longbottom. You remember how he wasn't very attractive, and then all of a sudden he got more attractive later on in life. I remember this. I remember this because when I was in school, girls and everybody would talk about, oh, this person's attractive, Hermione or Radcliffe, Daniel. What they would just talk about people, right? And Neville Longbottom, he's like the ugly guy. But now completely flipped. It's like because the circumstances change, now I want to engage in a relationship and sell it. But that's the thing, guys. Brandon, what do you have to say?
I think though, like, I feel like tolerance is a place that we get to though. Like, I still feel like it's at the end of the day, if someone is just unwilling to grow and to listen when you're being, once you've used that time to no longer be tolerant of what they're doing, you want to engage them, you want to say like, hey, this is not okay. Here's some things, some evidences that may be helpful for you in decision making. And if they still don't care, I feel like tolerance is the unfortunate end result if they still don't care, though, because the alternative after you've done all that you can do is to continue to run yourself ragged over someone who is unwilling to change. Like, tolerance is almost the boundary.
Yeah, I would say boundaries instead of tolerance, because if you maintain truth, I'm just thinking about people that I respect because they don't waver. It's like they maintain the truth and they put up a boundary, but they also give people the key to a gate where it's like, come back and let's talk about this when you're ready to step through the gate and engage with me. I'm still going to maintain this position, and that's not going to change. I'm not going to tolerate. Like, if you come in here, I'm not going to say your truth is right for you. I'm going to say, this is what I believe to be true. Convince me otherwise, because truth is truth. Let's figure out what it is, right? So I would say I would hazard to say that I would engage in healthy intolerance. And when you get to a certain point where somebody does not want to engage anymore, put up a boundary, but also put up a gate. Allow them back in. Just say, hey, when you're ready to talk about this again, come on, because you're still valuable. I'm sorry that you're feeling prideful or, you feel against me, because I'm not against you. Whether I'm right or wrong doesn't matter. What matters is there is a truth, and I'm trying to figure that out. And right now, you're not focused on figuring that out with me. You're focused on being right or wrong. So when you're ready, I have the posture of engaging with you again. And a lot of the people that I know, like, it is not a secret with all my friends that are homosexual that I disapprove of that lifestyle, but they know that I value them above that. I truly don't care about that. I do care, but it pales in comparison to the fact that I love who they are, which is exactly how God views me.
Well, I mean, I guess at the end of the day, yeah, I don't want to still remain tolerant of what people believe, because at the same time, if you do that too long, you can end up letting them step on you. Because it's like you're not going to enforce what you believe, so the least tolerant person is going to be the person at the end of the day who wins. Not, tolerant people don't win. Tolerant people are doormats. Or stepping stones to the intolerant person's direct, but in an healthy or an unhealthy way, though. Like, because again, apathy never empowers someone to get things done. Lack of care, whatever. As long as you don't care, you're not going to do anything about it, and it's just going to continue to get worse until you either have to or it's too late. So I feel like, I guess from that perspective, then it's wise not to remain tolerant, but to be intolerant, so that whatever you have a sphere of influence in, that you can keep that protected. You still have, like you said, the gate for the person to come back through should they decide to lay down their weapons and walk in. but every other place is a wall, and they can't. You're not going to get through that wall. Here's a literal location you can come through, and we're willing to work with you. But we also are going to protect our boundaries. We're going to protect what we believe, because if we're this intolerant about it, and it's healthy, we've taken the time to see the negative effects of the decisions you're making, and we don't want it. We do not want the things that come in with the belief of whatever it is that you're holding on to inflexibly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I guess, guys, since we're getting close to our time, a couple things I want you to ask yourself when you're thinking about this. How do I be healthy intolerant versus unhealthy intolerant? Just ask yourself, am I being prideful? Do I want to win this conversation? Is that what it's about? Right? So if you're engaging with somebody about how you pay your bills, or plans that you're making, or lifestyles that people will live, are you trying to prove them wrong? Is that the goal? Or are you navigating the conversation from the position of, okay, well, I believe this to be true. Let's talk about why you don't believe this to be true. It doesn't matter who's right or wrong. What matters is we're just looking at this from the same side of the table. Is that what you're focused on? So are you being prideful? When you look at the person, do you see value? Are you focused more on the value of that person, or are you focused more on the circumstance itself? So when you walk away from the conversation, do you find yourself grumbling, Democrats? Or do you find yourself saying, well, they just have a different viewpoint, I'm not tolerating that because I'm unashamed of my viewpoint because I believe it to be true. Or do you go in the conversation and it's like, they believe differently than I do, but I could see merit in what they're saying. Actually, yeah, let me consider this for myself. Are you willing to take things away from the conversation?
You can be well-rounded, but also intolerant at the same time.
Absolutely. I was telling somebody about this earlier. There's a guy on YouTube and Facebook, and his name is Morgue, Morgue. Now I'm not promoting him at all.
The morgue.
Yeah. Well, I don't know anything about him. I know very little. He just popped up, and I'm kind of intrigued. But he shaved his eyebrows. He painted his face white. He's got long platinum hair, black fingernails. Sometimes he has like symbolic face paint and the background is like glowing black and red, and it just seems demonic, or like Satanism or whatever. I don't know, but just that I think that's his shtick, like his persona. But he's all about mathematics and about intelligence and all this stuff. And he posted a video that said something like, you have a soul formula. And you know how people always like have these, what do you call them? The titles that kind of grab you?
Clickbait. There you go.
Yeah, like he's very clickbaity with that stuff. And he's like, you have a soul formula. And he started talking about scientific wavelengths and stuff and whatnot. And he was like, and then in the initial thing, he said, yeah, I'm here to talk about your soul and the fact that you have a soul, and not from the perspective of the dumb religion that a lot of people do. And I was tempted to feel insulted by that. I was like, what do you mean? Like, I believe in God and you're telling me that I'm stupid. But I felt a check in my spirit. I was like, no, I should just hear what he has to say because I'm not threatened by this. God's not threatened by it. The truth isn't threatened. He just has a perspective, and I should be able to listen to it and say, I accept this or I don't accept this. Now, he's a person, and the thing is, he might be so wrapped up in what he's thinking that he's putting more value on his position as his character, his position as a speaker, his find pride in the people that are in the comments. He might be doing that, and he might not know that he's wrong, But at the same time, God is in everything. So maybe what he's saying would actually support what I believe in a way that he might not believe it, if that makes sense. Because God is scientific. God created how everything worked down to the DNA, the molecule. Thinking about God and evolution and how that makes sense together, that intrigues me. So it's like I'm going into this understanding that, well, he might have something of value to teach me, not I need to go in here and prove that he's wrong, and I need to watch this and see if I have counter arguments. That's not what it's about. Jesus never comes to me and says, Tim, here's the truth that you have to. No, he's like, oh, okay, so you did that thing that I said was going to be unhealthy and you're facing the consequences. This sucks, doesn't it? Yeah, God, that really sucks. He's like, well, what are you going to do about it? Do you want to know anything? No, God, I enjoy what I do. Oh, okay, cool. Well, let's go look at these French bulldog videos. You know, God is very uninsistent about many things. He's open to you knocking and seeking, but he's very uninterested in forcing you to believe something.
Well, it's not loving to force people to believe things. I think that's more a better perspective looking at it. It is not loving to force someone into your box. And God does not like being put into a box. I can tell you, as one who talks to him often, and how he's been talking to me often, and many times he has told me to stop putting him in a box. He doesn't like it any more than we like being put into a box. It's a two-way street.
Yeah.
So, because that is who he is, that is who we are also. And so God doesn't try to put us into boxes any more than he wants to be put into a box himself, into our rigid thinking. So no, God's not a person. God is not a deity who likes to just force you to make specific actions or do things. He wants you to do them because you want to do them. And he wants to transform your heart so that way you can really see and taste and understand his goodness. So, I mean, if you want that, he will give that to you, but he's not going to do that until you ask. He will still bring opportunities for you to experience his goodness, and he is hardwired that into the universe itself. But at the end of the day, it's not going to be said that God forced me to be here. I think that if we're open to him, he'll definitely maneuver us more than often into places, and we may not necessarily want to be there in the moment, but we also have the opportunity just to flat out put our heels into the sand and say, nope. And if that's, he'll let that happen. But he's not going to change because you don't think this is the right thing or something, either. Like, he's not tolerant of our sin. He's just not.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a firm believer that Jesus, God, the Holy Spirit, they all model the way that we should live, And when I think about how I engage with God about a lot of things, like we're saying, he doesn't force me to believe anything. He always has an open door because, you got to understand that when you sin, God doesn't walk away from you. You walk away from him. He's still sitting on that bench.
Yep.
It's up to you to come back and sit on the bench with him. He doesn't get up and say, he's doing it again. The heck. And I'm going to go over here. I'm going to cool off for a bit. I'm going to come back and sit down. He's like, well, I mean, I'm not threatened by the dumb stuff that Tim does. I'm not threatened by sin. I've already had the victory for sin. So I'm going to I'm going to sit here and I'm just going to enjoy life. I'm going to be life-giving. I'm going to be a firm foundation, which if you go through the Bible, it talks about him being a strong foundation, a fortress for us, a place for us to rest, right? And it's up to us to always go back, just like the prodigal son. I mean, gosh, the prodigal son is such a good story. The kid does all this dumb stuff. And the dad's like, I'm giving you an inheritance so that you can do good things with your life. I'm giving you an inheritance. I'm giving you money. I'm giving you all this stuff for you to do good. And the kid went out and blew it, right? He had a difference of opinion, right? But he, not wanting to break that veil of conflict, thought, okay, I have to earn back my value. I have to earn it. I've done something dumb. I have to eat with the pigs. I have to work in the fields. But, he went to his dad and he was like, or his dad saw him and his dad started crying. And he's like, son, I've missed you. Get him the finest robe that we have, put his ring back on his finger, and slaughter the fattest calf. We're going to celebrate. And that's how God is. He's like, the circumstances pale in comparison to how much he sees in you and who he knows you to be and the way that he values you and the way he loves you. And that's the whole thing about being healthily intolerant. It's like, even though we do dumb stuff sometimes and people do dumb stuff or have poor perspectives, maintaining the truth is being that place for people to come back to and having that open door where you focus on their value instead of the circumstance. When people see you do that, you are a firm foundation of love for them because people don't have that. So many people don't have open doors of firm foundations of love to come back and be accepted, regardless of the dumb decisions or poor things that they do. And that's how you grow. A plant doesn't grow in soil that's harsh and is not nourishing, right? Think about that. If if the nourishing aspect of somebody's life puts up a veil of conflict and says, you stay over there while you do this, they're never going to get watered. They're never going to get loved. They're never going to receive what they need to grow. But if that veil of conflict is opened and says, hey, I got water over here. This is truth. This is life. Come over here if you're willing. When that person is willing and when they're humble, they'll come to the truth, right? And that's the posture we have to have.
Yeah, I guess you could say that true tolerance is unloving.
Yeah.
At least by definition. I'm sure that there are probably versions of tolerance that people understand in their head, such as me in the beginning of this, that could actually not technically be tolerance, but would be a loving way about going through things. However, by definition, tolerance is apathy. And apathy is death.
Yeah, it's super lonely, if anything.
If anything, it's super lonely. Yes, it's also kind of, I guess you could say, in some ways you could say that tolerance could be arrogance, in a very secretive way, because it's like, I don't know, it's like the idea that you could just let people be who they are, even though you disagree with them, and be off there in their corner, and as long as you stay over here, you're fine. It's like, I don't know, it's just like you're not allowing your thoughts or anything to be challenged. You don't like it, so you just stay away from them. Yeah. It's food for thought.
Yeah, we don't like challenge, and we don't like conflict. And the sad narrative is that we're all taught that conflict is bad, but conflict is the only thing. That's how you build relationship. We're not taught healthy conflict. We think that conflict is one side winning or losing, when true conflict is both sides winning, because they're pursuing the truth together. Conflict isn't side versus side. It's conflict in a healthy way is something that you do with somebody.
Yep. You need the other person. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And it's really important. To be intolerant of things allows you to know, is the other person willing to meet you on the other side, or meet in the middle, kind of thing. And you won't be able to know that until you decide to let people to get involved in the things of that person's life you don't like about what they believe or whatever. But if you do so from a place of grace and love, recognizing their value regardless of their actions, I think that's the best way about going about intolerance, in a healthy way of being loving, of being able to recognize their value, and going into that, making sure that there's no log in your eye, no sort of biases, filters, plugs in your ears, and then going into the conversation with some degree of vulnerability that will help you discover, wow, maybe I can get some more out of this friendship and dig in and grow together with this person. Or, I've been accepting this my whole life. I need to stop accepting it, because now I realize how much this could be hurting me and others around me. And then you can put up proper boundaries to keep yourself from being hurt, because you no longer wish to tolerate with something that is destructive, a belief mindset. Not to say that the person in and of themselves are destructive, but the way that they live based off of their beliefs that is unhealthy can be damaging to you and to others. And by having that degree of intolerance, to go out of your way to get to know what they believe, to then express what you believe, and to say, this is where are you willing to work with this with me? No? Okay, well, I'm willing to continue to be in your life. However, this is the gate you must come through first before I can let you in closer than you currently are right now.
Yeah. Now, one last thing I want to leave you guys with before we close is, if you are a Christian and you have a relationship with God, or even if you have a hard heart towards God because you believe that something that he says no about is something that you believe he should say yes about, I want to encourage you just to engage the thought of, okay, well, if God loves me And if I am super valuable apart from my circumstances, why would he say that this isn't healthy for me? And apply that to anything. It could be a video game that you play. It could be a sexual relationship that you have, whether it's premarital, homosexual, whatever. It could be a view on your identity. It could be a view on your finances. It could be a view on how you view other people, other drivers, whatever. Just think to yourself, okay, the truth is God loves me. The truth is I'm intentionally made, and the truth is God values me so much that his son, and who God was embodied, was tortured and died for me. That is the truth, right? And if that is the truth, just try it. Just consider it, right? Well, the worst thing that could happen is it's not true and you're not valuable. That's the worst thing that could happen, right? But just think about it. Say, okay, well, what if that's the truth? What if that's truth? Then if that's the case, then why is this unhealthy? Right?
Yeah.
And if you seek that and just hazard, God, if you exist, teach me why this is unhealthy. Man, if you ask that one question, so much will start to make sense in your life. And guys, you'll start to see, God loves me and I didn't see it all along.
Confirmation bias is a thing. And I think every single human being is subject to some degree, whether large or small, of confirmation bias. And so you have the opportunity of which way your bias will point. If you wish to believe that what God says is wrong, you will find enough evidence, most of which I believe is fabricated, ironically, to support that belief. But if you're willing to believe that what God's word says is right and that he loves you and that there's a reason why he says it's wrong, you will find it. It does exist out there. But you have to be willing that it does exist. Otherwise, you literally mentally will not have the energy necessary to find what you're looking for, at least not easily. And if you do happen to find someone, if someone literally comes up to you in their intolerance and says, look at this evidence, it won't mean a hill of beans until you're willing to point in the direction of what you're wanting to try to believe. And even if you're just a little bit, you can get a lot out of it. Like, you don't have to be like, yes, I'm going to completely believe this now, 100%. No, God's willing to work with just a little bit. Faith the size of a mustard seed. He can create huge things out of that. But you have to at least be somewhat willing to believe that God is good, and if he says there's something that is or is not right, there's a good reason behind it that's not just because he said so, but because science. And that's what we like to try to point out as much as we can in Thought Raid, is that the Word of God is not just some book written by man that is a bunch of religious rules and there's nothing more to it. No, there is scientific, psychological reasoning behind the things that are written in it that is provable, and we've been through some stuff to kind of see that through experience and through study. So, yeah. So, do you think that's a good place to stop, Tim?
Yeah, I feel pretty good about it. And guys, just real quick. We love to hear your feedback in the comments. If you disagree with us, that's the whole point of this. We're not afraid of that. Just understand that if you respond and you do disagree with us, we're not going to take offense to it. So you can relax. We want to consider every mode of thought, because truth is truth regardless.
Yeah.
Right. So I just want to encourage you, if you disagree, or if you just don't understand, or if you have questions, post them in the comments or jump in our Discord. It's in the link below. And you can also email us at thoughtraid@gmail.com. We love engaging with our community. And we are not afraid of pretty much any question.
I would like to put out there that actually, technically, the Discord link is not in the link below. The Patreon is in the link below. But we do have connections to Discord and other places, I think, namely on our YouTube page. I'll have to double check that, but I think we do.
Well, I know it's on breakthemeta.net. Small plug. It is there if you want to check it out.
Cool. So yeah, and guys, if this video has really blessed you, I'd like to encourage you to like it. and to subscribe to us on YouTube. And to share it with your friends, because that way we can get stuff like this out to others and help people who are going through same issues where they're wondering, should I continue to be tolerant about things, or should I stand up for what I believe in certain areas and not be tolerant and risk whatever comes along with that. So if that really has blessed you, do consider subscribing to us on YouTube and sharing this and liking the video. That would really help us a lot. Because that's just how algorithms work with things. So the more things are seen, the more things are seen in the social media world. But I want to thank you guys for watching. We broadcast every week, Mondays, Fridays, and Saturdays at 4 p.m. And we'll be live again tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard. So, Eastern Standard Time. Yeah. But I want to thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you again soon. Bye, everybody.